The smallest choices can change a life you have never met. I did not know that on the coldest night of the winter. I only knew my hands hurt from the wind and my breath turned white every time I exhaled. The city looked different after dark. Streetlights glowed through falling snow. Cars moved slowly along frozen roads. People walked with their heads down, rushing toward somewhere warm. I was doing the same. My shift at the library had ended an hour earlier, and all I wanted was a hot shower and a blanket. The dark blue coat wrapped around my shoulders was not expensive, but it was the warmest thing I owned. I had saved for months to buy it. That coat had carried me through 2 winters already. It felt like a small victory every time I wore it. The bus stop was 3 blocks away when I saw her. At first, she was just another shadow sitting beneath the awning of a closed convenience store. Then I noticed she was shivering. Not the kind of shiver people get when they forget gloves. The kind that makes a person curl inward as if they are trying to disappear. Snow had gathered on her shoulders. Her hands were tucked beneath her arms. A thin sweatshirt was all she had against the freezing temperature. I slowed down. Then I kept walking. I wish I could say I stopped immediately. I did not. I took several more steps. Because I was cold too. Because I was tired. Because I knew I could not afford another coat right now. Then I looked back. The woman had not moved. The wind pushed loose snow across the sidewalk around her. For a second I thought about my mother waiting at home. I thought about the heating bill sitting on our kitchen counter. I thought about all the reasons it would be smarter to keep walking. None of them felt right. So I turned around. The woman looked startled when I approached. Her eyes lifted toward me cautiously. Up close she appeared older than I first thought. Maybe 60. Maybe older. Life has a way of hiding a person's age. Are you okay? I asked. She smiled weakly. I will be. Her voice trembled. That answer somehow made everything worse. People who are truly struggling often pretend they are fine. I slipped my backpack off one shoulder and set it down. Then I unbuttoned my coat. The freezing air hit instantly. Every sensible thought in my head screamed that I was making a mistake. I ignored them. The woman stared in confusion as I carefully draped the coat over her shoulders. You need this more than I do, I said. Her eyes widened. No. I cannot take that. Yes, you can. She tried to protest again, but I gently pulled the coat closed around her. Almost immediately, her shaking began to ease. We sat there for a moment while snow continued falling around us. Neither of us said much. Some moments do not need many words. Finally, tears appeared in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. I smiled and picked up my backpack. The cold struck harder now. My sweater was nowhere near warm enough for the weather. Yet somehow I felt lighter than before. I wished her a good night and started walking toward the bus stop. Behind me, the woman remained wrapped in the coat. Ahead of me, the city stretched into a blur of white lights and drifting snow. What I did not know was that someone had witnessed everything from a black sedan parked across the street. And before that winter night was over, my simple choice would become the beginning of a story neither of us could have imagined. The bus ride home felt longer than usual. Cold air followed me every time the doors opened. By the time I stepped off near my apartment building, my fingers were numb and my cheeks burned from the wind. Snow continued falling in slow, steady waves. The city looked quiet beneath the white blanket covering sidewalks and rooftops. I pulled my sweater tighter around myself and hurried toward home. Inside our small apartment, warmth greeted me immediately. The scent of soup drifted from the kitchen. My mother looked up from the table the moment I entered. Her eyes moved straight to my shoulders. "Where is your coat?" she asked. I laughed softly, hoping to make the answer sound less dramatic than it was. Someone needed it more than I did. She studied me for a second, then she smiled. Not because she approved of the decision, because she understood exactly why I had made it. She knew me too well. Meanwhile, several miles away, Gabriel Russo remained seated inside the black sedan parked across from the convenience store. The windshield reflected snowflakes drifting through the darkness. His driver had already asked twice if they should leave. Gabriel never answered. He kept looking toward the spot where the young woman had disappeared. In his world, people protected what belonged to them. They guarded resources. They calculated risks. They measured every decision by cost and reward. Yet a stranger had willingly given away the warmest thing she owned to someone she would probably never see again. The action made no sense, which was exactly why he could not stop thinking about it. Finally, the elderly woman wrapped in the coat stood and slowly walked toward a nearby shelter. Gabriel watched until she disappeared inside. Only then did he lean back in his seat. "Find out who she is," he said quietly. The driver glanced into the mirror. "The woman with the coat?" Gabriel nodded. "Yes." The answer surprised even him. He was not usually interested in strangers, but something about her lingered. The next morning, I arrived at the library carrying an old jacket I found buried in my closet. It was thinner and several years out of style, but it would have to do. The heating system inside the building worked overtime against the freezing temperatures outside. Children gathered in the reading area. Parents browsed shelves. Retirees sat near the windows reading newspapers. Everything felt familiar, comfortable, safe. Yet throughout the day, I caught myself wondering about the woman from the night before. Had she stayed warm? Had she found somewhere secure to sleep? I hope so. Around lunchtime, a little boy entered the library carrying a stack of books almost taller than he was. One slipped from his arms. I picked it up and handed it back. His grin instantly brightened the room. Moments like that reminded me why I loved my job. Small things mattered. They always had. Across the city, information about Emily Carter slowly began landing on Gabriel's desk. 29 years old. Librarian. Primary caregiver for her mother.
No extraordinary allt. No influential connections. No hidden agenda.
The reports revealed something else. Emily volunteered regularly, donated whenever she could, helped people without seeking recognition. Gabriel closed the file and stared through his office window at the snowy skyline. The mystery only deepened, because according to every fact in front of him, the woman who gave away her coat was exactly who she appeared to be. And somehow that was the most surprising discovery of all. Days passed, then weeks. Winter settled deeper over the city. Snow gathered along sidewalks and covered parked cars in layers of white. Every morning I woke before sunrise, made coffee for my mother, and hurried to work before the roads became crowded. Life remained simple, predictable, at least on the surface. The truth was that money had become tighter than ever. The coat had not been the only thing wearing out. My car needed repairs. Medical bills continued arriving in the mail. The heating bill climbed higher with every cold night. Still, I told myself we would manage. We always did. One Saturday afternoon, I left the library and headed straight to a food pantry where I volunteered twice a month. The building sat between an old church and a hardware store. Nothing about it looked remarkable. Yet for many families, it was one of the most important places in the neighborhood. I spent 3 hours carrying boxes, organizing donations, and helping visitors find what they needed. By the end, my back ached and my hands felt raw from the cold. Yet I left smiling. There was something comforting about helping people who understood struggle. Across the city, Gabriel Russo sat inside his office reviewing another report. This one contained photographs. Emily unloading food donations. Emily helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries. Emily reading to children during a weekend literacy program. The images created a pattern that was impossible to ignore. She was not kind once. She was kind constantly. Gabriel leaned back in his chair and stared at the skyline beyond the window. In his experience, people usually wanted something. Money, influence, opportunity, favors. Even generosity often arrived attached to conditions. Emily seemed different. She gave, without expecting a reward. The concept fascinated him. Meanwhile, I remained completely unaware of his existence. One evening, I stopped at a grocery store after work. I carefully compared prices before placing anything into my cart. Every dollar mattered. Halfway through shopping, I noticed an elderly man struggling to reach an item on a high shelf. I grabbed it for him without thinking. He thanked me as though I had done something extraordinary. The interaction lasted less than 30 seconds. Yet moments like that followed me everywhere. Small opportunities to help. Small chances to make someone's day easier. They never felt important at the time. The following morning, Gabriel received another update. Emily Carter, 29. Librarian. Caregiver. Volunteer. No criminal record.
No hidden wealth.
No influential friends. No secret ambitions. Just an ordinary woman carrying more responsibility than most people realized. Then he reached a section discussing her mother. Gabriel's expression slowly changed. Medical treatments. Prescription expenses. Ongoing health concerns. Emily had been covering most of the costs herself. The numbers painted a difficult picture. Gabriel closed the folder and looked out the window again. Snow drifted past the glass in slow circles. For the first time, he felt something stronger than curiosity. Respect. Because despite every challenge, Emily continued showing up for other people. She continued giving away time, energy, and resources she could barely spare. That evening, I sat beside my mother on the couch while an old movie played quietly in the background. She noticed me studying a stack of unpaid bills on the coffee table. "You are worrying again," she said gently. I smiled and pretended she was wrong. She squeezed my hand. "You have a good heart, Emily." I laughed softly. "A good heart does not pay electric bills." My mother smiled. "Maybe not. But it changes lives." I looked away, embarrassed by the compliment. What I did not know was that somewhere across the city, a man who had everything money could buy was beginning to believe exactly the same thing. Winter tightened its grip on the city. Every morning felt colder than the one before. The wind slipped through cracks in old windows and rattled against apartment buildings long before sunrise. I learned to ignore it. There were too many other things demanding attention. My mother's next medical appointment was approaching. The library budget was shrinking again. My car made a strange noise every time I turned left. Life had become a collection of small problems waiting their turn. One snowy evening, I arrived home carrying grocery bags and found my mother sitting quietly at the kitchen table. A stack of papers rested beside her teacup. I recognized them immediately. Medical bills. She tried to slide them out of sight when she saw me. I pretended not to notice. We had played this game before. "How was your day?" she asked. I smiled and unpacked groceries. "Busy." The answer was true. It was also incomplete. Busy had become my way of describing everything. Tired, worried, overwhelmed, determined. Meanwhile, across town, Gabriel Russo sat alone inside his office reviewing another report about Emily Carter. He had intended to stop reading weeks ago. Curiosity should have faded by now. Instead, it continued growing. Every new detail seemed to reveal another reason to admire her. The latest report confirmed what he already suspected. Emily was carrying more responsibility than anyone should carry alone. Her mother's health expenses continued increasing. Her savings account was nearly gone. Yet there was no record of missed volunteer work. No evidence that she had stopped helping others. Gabriel closed the folder and stared at the snowfall outside. The city lights blurred behind drifting white flakes. For the first time in years, a simple question bothered him. Why would someone keep giving when life kept taking? The next weekend, the answer appeared unexpectedly. I was leaving a pharmacy after picking up medication for my mother, when I noticed a young father standing near the entrance. His daughter looked no older than 7. The little girl held a stuffed rabbit with one missing ear. The father searched his wallet repeatedly while speaking quietly to the pharmacist. Even from a distance, I could see the embarrassment on his face. Something about the scene felt familiar. Not because I knew them, because I understood what it felt like when numbers on a receipt became impossible. I stepped forward before I could overthink it. A few minutes later, the prescription was paid for. The father tried to thank me. I smiled and told him to take care of his daughter. Then I left before he could ask my name. The entire interaction lasted less than 5 minutes. By the time I reached my car, I had already forgotten about it. Gabriel had not. He happened to be exiting a nearby building when he witnessed everything. Once again, he watched Emily help someone she did not know. Once again, she walked away expecting nothing in return. Snow continued falling around him as he stood beside the sidewalk. For several moments he remained perfectly still. Then something shifted inside him. Respect had become admiration. Admiration was becoming something deeper. Not romance. Not yet. Something rare. The realization that a person could change the atmosphere around them simply by existing. That night, Gabriel made a decision. Emily Carter would never ask him for help. He knew that already, which meant if he intended to change her circumstances, he would have to do it without damaging the dignity she guarded so fiercely. And somewhere in the darkness beyond his office window, the first pieces of that plan were already beginning to fall into place. The first change appeared on a Monday morning. I noticed it while sorting returned books before the library opened. An email from the city had arrived overnight. At first, I assumed it was another budget notice. Those usually meant cuts, delays, or bad news disguised as administrative language. Instead, the message announced that a private donor had funded a new literacy initiative for underserved children. The grant was large enough to keep several community programs running through the following year. I read the email twice because I thought I misunderstood it, then a third time. Around me, coworkers reacted with disbelief and excitement. Some laughed. Others looked relieved enough to cry. The library had been preparing for reductions for months. Suddenly those fears disappeared. The timing felt almost miraculous. Yet I did not think much about it after that. Good things happen sometimes. Rarely. Unexpectedly. But they happen. A few days later, another surprise arrived. A local repair shop called about my car. I immediately assumed something was wrong. Instead, the owner explained that an anonymous customer had prepaid a community assistance fund months earlier. My vehicle qualified for a heavily discounted repair program. The amount I owed was a fraction of what I expected. I sat in silence after ending the call. For several seconds, I simply stared through the kitchen window at snow melting along the sidewalk. Life had been throwing problems at me for so long that good news felt unfamiliar. My mother noticed the expression on my face. "What happened?" she asked. I explained everything. She smiled warmly. "Maybe the universe decided to take a break from testing you." I laughed. That would be nice. Across the city, Gabriel reviewed reports from his office. He never requested updates about the repair shop. He already knew the outcome. The same was true of the literacy grant. Every step had been carefully arranged through legitimate channels.
No favors. No obligations.
No expectation that Emily would ever know who made them possible. Gabriel understood something important. The moment kindness feels like charity, pride gets wounded. He respected Emily too much for that. Weeks passed. Winter slowly began loosening its grip. The air remained cold, but sunlight stayed a little longer each evening. At the library, the new literacy program transformed everything. Children filled reading rooms after school. Families attended workshops. Volunteers appeared in larger numbers. Watching the building come alive again filled me with energy I had not felt in months. One afternoon, I stood near the entrance helping a young girl choose her first chapter book. Her excitement reminded me why these programs mattered. Not because of budgets or statistics. Because of moments like this. Small victories. Quiet opportunities. Futures beginning one page at a time. Later that evening, I walked through the nearly empty library after closing. The lights cast warm reflections across polished floors. Books lined the shelves like old friends. For the first time in a long while, I felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Real hope. Not the fragile kind people force themselves to believe. The kind that arrives naturally. The kind that feels earned. What I could not see was a man standing outside across the street inside a parked black sedan. Gabriel watched the library through the windshield as snowflakes drifted past the glass. He saw children leaving with books tucked beneath their arms. He saw parents smiling. He saw Emily locking the front doors with a tired but genuine expression. Then he smiled too. Because for the first time since that winter night, he could see proof that one act of kindness had already started changing more than one life. Spring arrived almost unnoticed. One day the streets were buried beneath dirty piles of melting snow. The next, sunlight lingered longer in the evenings and patches of green appeared in parks across the city. The change felt symbolic somehow. Life seemed lighter. Not easier. Just lighter. At the library, the literacy program continued growing beyond anyone's expectations. New volunteers signed up every week. Children who once struggled to read now raced toward the shelves looking for their next book. Parents stayed after workshops to thank us. The building felt alive in a way I had never experienced before. One Tuesday afternoon, our director called an emergency staff meeting. The announcement sent a wave of anxiety through the room. Budget meetings rarely brought good news. We gathered in the community room and waited. Then she smiled. Nobody missed how unusual that was. "I have something exciting to share," she said. The room immediately relaxed. She explained that an anonymous donor had provided enough funding to renovate several outdated areas of the library, expand children's programs, and create a scholarship fund for educational outreach. For a moment nobody spoke. Then applause erupted. Some employees looked stunned. Others laughed in disbelief. I sat quietly absorbing the news. The scholarship fund especially mattered. For years we had watched talented children lose opportunities because their families could not afford additional educational support. Suddenly that reality was changing. After the meeting ended, I wandered through the library alone. Sunlight streamed through tall windows and stretched across rows of books. Dust particles drifted through golden beams of light. Everything felt different. Hope had become visible. Across town, Gabriel sat with his daughter Sophia during an early dinner. She was 12 now, bright, curious, observant. She had inherited his eyes and her mother's kindness. "You are smiling," Sophia said suddenly. Gabriel looked up from his coffee. "Am I?" She nodded. "You only do that when something important happens." Gabriel laughed softly. "Maybe something good happened." Sophia studied him for a moment. "Does it have anything to do with the library lady?" The question caught him completely off guard. "Library lady?" Sophia grinned. "The one you keep asking questions about." Gabriel shook his head, though the smile remained. Children noticed more than adults realized. Later that week, another surprise arrived in my life. My mother's doctor reviewed her latest test results and adjusted part of her treatment plan. For the first time in months, there were signs of improvement. Small signs, but real ones. When we left the appointment, my mother squeezed my hand. The afternoon sunlight reflected off nearby windows and filled the parking lot with warmth. "See," she said gently, "things can change." I wanted to believe her. More than that, I was beginning to. That evening, after locking the library doors, I noticed a little girl sitting on a bench outside waiting for her ride home. She was reading one of our chapter books with complete concentration. The sight made me smile. Sometimes people imagine that changing the world requires enormous gestures. Yet standing there, watching a child fall in love with reading, I realized how often transformation begins quietly. One person helping another. One opportunity. One act of kindness. One decision to care. What I still did not know was that the man who had witnessed my choice on that winter night was becoming increasingly connected to every hopeful change unfolding around me. And soon, for the first time, our paths would begin moving toward the same destination. The first time I met Sophia, I did not know who she was. It happened on a bright Saturday morning at the library. Spring sunlight poured through the windows, turning the reading room gold. Children moved between shelves carrying books almost too large for their arms. Parents sat nearby with coffee cups and patient smiles. Everything felt peaceful. I was organizing a display near the children's section when I noticed a girl standing alone beside a bookshelf. She looked about 12 years old. Dark hair. Intelligent eyes. A notebook tucked beneath one arm. She was studying the books as if she were searching for something specific. "Can I help you find anything?" I asked. She glanced up and smiled politely. "Maybe. I already finished most of these." That answer made me laugh. "Most of them?" She nodded toward an entire shelf. "The mystery section." I looked at her for a second. "Well, that is either impressive or slightly concerning." She laughed too. The sound felt genuine. Within minutes we were discussing favorite authors, stories, and characters. She spoke with unusual confidence for someone her age. More importantly, she listened. Truly listened. That quality was rare. Before long, I helped her select several books from another section. She carried them carefully as though they were treasures. "Thank you," she said. "Most adults just tell me I am too young for the books I like." "Most adults are wrong sometimes," I replied. Her smile widened. Throughout the following weeks, Sophia returned often. She attended literacy events, joined reading discussions, helped younger children choose books. Somehow she seemed to belong there immediately. The other volunteers liked her. The children adored her. So did I. There was a kindness beneath her intelligence that reminded me of someone. though I could never quite identify who. One afternoon we sat together at a table after a community reading program. She was drawing stars across the edge of her notebook while I cleaned up materials. "Do you ever get tired?" she suddenly asked. I looked up. Of what? Helping everyone. The question caught me off guard. I thought about it honestly before answering. Sometimes. She nodded as if she already knew. Then why do you keep doing it? Sunlight reflected across the tabletop between us. Around the room, families prepared to leave. Because people helped me when I needed it, I said. And because the world gets better every time someone chooses kindness. Sophia stared down at her notebook for a moment. Then she smiled. I liked that answer. Across town, Gabriel listened carefully while Sophia described her latest visit to the library. It had become a regular topic during dinner. The more she talked about Emily, the quieter Gabriel became. Not because he disliked hearing about it. Quite the opposite. He found himself looking forward to those conversations. Sophia spoke about books, about volunteer projects, about the librarian who somehow made every person feel important. Gabriel recognized every quality she described, the same qualities that had occupied his thoughts for months. Meanwhile, I remained completely unaware of the connection. To me, Sophia was simply a bright young girl who loved books and carried light into every room she entered. Yet with each passing week, our lives moved closer together. And somewhere beyond my understanding, the distance between kindness and destiny was growing smaller every day. Some truths arrive quietly. Others walk straight into your life and refuse to leave. Mine arrived on a Thursday afternoon. The library hosted a small celebration for the literacy program. Families filled the community room. Children carried certificates and posed for photographs. Laughter echoed between shelves. Everything felt bright and hopeful. I was helping clean up after the event when our director approached me holding a folder. "I think you should see this," she said. Inside were documents connected to the anonymous donations that had transformed our programs. Most of the information had been removed for privacy reasons, but one page remained attached by mistake. A company name appeared near the bottom. I recognized it immediately, not because I knew much about the business, because I had seen it recently in a newspaper article beside a photograph. Gabriel Russo. The name settled heavily in my thoughts. Later that evening, curiosity pushed me toward an internet search. What I found raised even more questions. Business ventures, community investments, public appearances, influence, wealth, and a photograph. The moment I saw his face, something clicked. I had never spoken to him, yet somehow he looked familiar. Then I remembered. A black sedan parked across the street on that winter night. A man watching from behind the windshield. My stomach tightened. Over the next several days, pieces continued falling into place. The grant, the repair program, other opportunities that had appeared at exactly the right moment. Coincidences suddenly felt less convincing. By the following week, I knew I needed answers. Fate provided them unexpectedly. Sophia invited me to attend a small reading event at a community center across town. I agreed without hesitation. The moment I entered the building, I saw him. Gabriel stood near a window speaking with several organizers. Sunlight streamed across the room. For a second, everything else faded away. Sophia noticed my expression and smiled. "You finally met my father," she said. Father. The word explained everything. Gabriel turned toward us. For the first time, our eyes met directly. There was no surprise in his expression, only calm understanding, as though he had known this moment would come. Later, after the event ended, we found ourselves alone on a quiet outdoor terrace overlooking the city. Spring air carried the scent of fresh rain. Lights flickered on across distant buildings. I folded my arms and looked at him. "Was it you?" I asked. He did not pretend confusion. "Which part?" "The library, the funding, the repairs, everything." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he nodded. "Some of it." I looked away toward the skyline. A mixture of gratitude and frustration twisted inside me. "Why?" His answer came immediately. "Because I wanted to help. People do not usually spend that much helping strangers. You were never a stranger." I laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. "You did not even know me." "Gabriel." stepped closer but remained respectful. I knew enough. The city lights reflected in the distance behind him. I saw someone give away warmth when she had very little of it herself. After that, I paid attention. My chest tightened unexpectedly. For months I had believed the good things appearing in my life were random. Now they had a face, a voice, a reason. Yet I still was not sure how to feel about any of it. And standing there beneath the evening sky, I realized the conversation that would change everything had only just begun. The city lights stretched across the horizon like scattered stars. For several moments neither of us spoke. The evening air carried the cool promise of summer approaching. Below us, traffic moved through the streets in quiet streams of light. I leaned against the railing and tried to untangle everything I was feeling. Gratitude, confusion, admiration, frustration. None of it fit neatly together. Gabriel remained calm beside me. He was not trying to defend himself. He was not trying to justify anything. Somehow that made the conversation harder. "You should have told me," I finally said. He nodded slowly. "Maybe." I would have said no. A small smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "I know." That answer almost made me laugh. Instead I shook my head. "You do not even realize why this bothers me." His expression softened. "I think I do." The city breeze lifted a few strands of hair across my face. "Then tell me." Gabriel looked toward the skyline before answering. "You spent your entire life standing on your own feet. You helped people because you believed it was right, not because you wanted rewards. If I had appeared with a check and a speech about generosity, I would have insulted the very thing I admired most." The words settled between us. For the first time since discovering the truth, I found myself unable to argue, because part of me knew he was right. Silence returned. Comfortable this time. Not awkward. Just thoughtful. Finally I looked at him. "Why did you really do it?" His answer came so quietly I almost missed it. "Because you reminded me of something I thought I had lost." The evening light reflected in his eyes. "What?" I asked. Gabriel smiled faintly. "Faith." The word surprised me. He rested his hands against the railing and continued. "I spend most of my life around people chasing something. Money, status, influence, control. Then one night I watched a woman give away warmth she could barely afford to lose. Nobody was filming it. Nobody was rewarding it. She simply saw someone hurting and decided that mattered more than her own comfort." He looked directly at me. I could not stop thinking about that. Emotion tightened unexpectedly in my chest. Not because of the money. Not because of the programs or opportunities. Because for the first time I understood that Gabriel had never been trying to rescue me. He had been responding to what he saw in me. The same way I had responded to a stranger sitting in the cold. Weeks later, life continued moving forward. Summer arrived. Trees filled with green leaves. Children crowded the library every afternoon. The scholarship program expanded. My mother's health continued improving. And somehow Gabriel became part of our lives without forcing his way into them. Sophia made sure of that. She invited both of us to community events, reading programs, and volunteer projects whenever possible. Before long, spending time together felt natural. One evening near the end of summer, the three of us walked along the river after a community fundraiser. The water reflected gold from the setting sun. Sophia moved ahead of us, laughing as she pointed out shapes in the clouds. I watched her for a moment before looking toward Gabriel. He seemed lighter than the man I first met on that terrace. Happier. Perhaps I did too. The future remained uncertain. Life always is. But for the first time, uncertainty felt exciting rather than frightening. As the sun disappeared beyond the skyline, I thought back to a freezing winter night and a coat I never expected to see again. I had believed I was giving away something valuable. What I never realized was that kindness has a way of returning in forms we cannot predict. Sometimes it comes back as hope. Sometimes it comes back as healing. And sometimes it comes back as the people who help us remember that even in a cold world, warmth still exists.